All right, so we are live. So thank you everyone for joining us this Sunday morning. Our Stand Up Fight Back, where we strategy and analysis for the progressive. That's Carlos Maruki. He's the amazing grassroots organizer and also co-host of this show. So as always, please share us with your friends, your family members, hit the like button, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, wherever you're watching this from. But please let people know that we do this show every Sunday morning. We are not even viewer supported. We just do this because we really care about these issues. So today we have two very special guests. We have Councilmember Mike Bonin. He represents City Council District 11 in Los Angeles. And we also have Ben Hauck. Is that correct, Ben? Did I get your name right?
Hauck.
Hauck?
Yep, you got it.
Hauck. Ben Hauck. He's also an organizer, and he was with the Bernie Sanders campaign as well as a Bernie Sanders victory captain during the 2020 election. And Carlos, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about our guest today.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you, and Bonin for joining us today and this Sunday. I know you have a family and you're taking time away from your family, but it's an honor to have you here with us. Councilman Bonin, I know him from a few years back when he was working with former and the late Councilman Rosenthal. So has been out there in the trenches, have been, doing great work, and I have seen pretty much him moving so much into the progressive side that it's amazing to be able to have someone that represents our views at City Council. So honored to have him. And Ben Hauck is a personal friend of mine, and we are there in the front lines working in so many different issues. I call him one of those people that work in the inside, and he's so effective working the inside, but he also works on the outside. So he brings so much to the movement. He's a great voice, well respected, and we are just honored to have both of you here today.
Thank you, Carlos.
Glad to be here, man.
Yeah. So we want to go ahead and jump right away into this conversation because we're going to try to take as much time, advantage of the time that we have with both of you. But Councilman Bonin, welcome again, and tell us a little bit about you, your background, and district that you represent.
Yeah, sure. First of all, to either of you or to anybody, don't call me Councilman, call me Mike. That's just fine. I guess probably most relevant for this audience is I was a Bernie Sanders delegate for 2020 for that weird virtual convention, and I had the real honor of speaking and being one of the people who introduced Bernie at the huge rally he and AOC did at Venice Beach in December, a few months before the California primary. It was a huge and awesome event. I guess the thumbnail of my my sort of legislative record is I've represented the west side of Los Angeles for the past for the past 8 years, and that includes Venice Beach, Los Angeles International Airport, some of the wealthier areas of Los Angeles, and the issues that I've really worked on is I've tried to work with activists like Ben and use an inside-outside strategy to move progressive legislation forward. So I'm the one of the authors of our $15 minimum wage, which we did first and sort of set off a game of dominoes where $15 became the standard in many other places. I work a real lot on homelessness issues and affordable housing, standing up for renters. On the environment, I work very hard on combating climate change. We have the largest municipally owned utility in the country, and damn it, we are going to get to 100% clean energy, and we're going to do it fast. And I also work a lot on transit issues. I sit on our regional transit agency, and there I really try to be an advocate for our bus riders who are predominantly low income, predominantly people of color, and we're fighting right now to move to a fareless transit system, which could be one of the biggest social justice issues, if accomplished in Los Angeles, really in decades. And then a whole bunch of stuff on trying to reimagine public safety, as many of us are trying to do across the country, despite some backlash.
Right. Thank you. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an organizer, activist, kind of started on the outside working on environmental issues, working on divestment, in which Mike was a huge ally with us. Through the Divest LA campaign, I've worked on public banking with Public Bank Los Angeles, California Public Banking Alliance, where we've taken a number of different pieces of legislation, one of them successfully forward with AB 857, which allows us to actually create public banks at the municipal or county or JPA level here in California. So we have some really exciting progress happening in multiple cities, including here in Los Angeles. Kind of shifted a little bit of my focus towards the inside. I became a delegate in the California Democratic Party, and most recently I ran and won my election for the Southern California Vice Chair to the California Democratic Party Progressive Caucus, where we're really looking at implementing that inside-outside strategy, making sure that we're connecting all the incredible organizers and all of the groups across California, with my focus being here in Southern California, to ensure that we can implement these progressive ideas that we talk a lot about, but we don't seem to make a lot of progress on here in California, which is supposed to be the most progressive state in the nation. So yeah, really focused on bringing together that inside-outside strategy, whether it's at the city level, whether it's at the state level, or in between.
Right. Thank you. Thank you both. Mike, look, here's the bottom line. Homelessness is a problem. It's a huge problem in California, but it's not only California. This is really across the nation. We're facing very, very difficult times. As an advocate for the unhoused, I don't like what I see, the conditions. I don't think there's no one that actually rejoices of the fact that people have to sleep on the streets. But the facts are the facts, and we have a huge problem. But the problem didn't start yesterday, and it didn't start with you, and it didn't start with other politicians. This has been a continuing growing of a problem because of all kinds of different reasons behind it. But you're being blamed for a lot, and I can see to a point where we can hold our elected officials accountable, but this is beyond your district. This is happening everywhere in Los Angeles. So it is unfair, I think, for to throw all the weight on you and being targeted not only by those people that are running for mayor, that have made their intentions to run for mayor, but also in the case, as I was watching, closely monitoring, we have the Los Angeles Sheriff's Alex Villanueva that took opportunity to position himself, and all of a sudden he cared about homelessness. So we see all those things that are happening. What do you say to all this?
Well, I'd go a little bit further in my characterization of homelessness. It's not a problem. It is an epic humanitarian crisis, and it affects everybody in Los Angeles. I don't care what neighborhood you live in. It affects everybody, and it affects people who are housed. It affects people who are unhoused. 5 people on average are dying a day. We have encampments everywhere in Los Angeles, on our sidewalks, in our parks. We have one of the largest unsheltered homeless populations in the country. And it has become a sort of flashpoint and a rallying cry for people who are trying to recall Gavin Newsom, for people who are like Sheriff Villanueva, trying to distract from their horrible record of civil rights violations. and people who are trying to recall me and sort of do a regressive backlash to sort of progressive politics here in Los Angeles. Fact of the matter is, we are trying to actually do what needs to be done on homelessness. The common denominator on homelessness is we need to have more housing. We need to bring people indoors. And we keep focusing here in Los Angeles on strategies to criminalize, which locks people into poverty and homelessness, which just pushes homelessness from neighborhood to neighborhood, and frankly pits housed versus unhoused over that fight. The thing we need to be doing is get people indoors. I just worked with a local service agency, St. Joseph Center, and in 5 weeks, we brought 211 people indoors from Venice Beach into interim housing, all of them matched up with a resource that will get them into permanent housing. That's how you do it. And many of the people who are most behind some of these recall efforts have actually been the leaders in efforts to stop solutions to homelessness. They have sued to stop housing. They have sued to stop shelter. They have appealed to stop converting motels into homeless housing. They have opposed the money that we just used to house people in Venice Beach. It's a little bit crazy. We got to address this solution, and we got to bring people indoors. It's the humane thing, and it's the right thing. And what I'd say, just to sort of end my answer to the question, is I think progressives have a very important voice in this discussion, because so many people, even people in public office, look at homelessness without really looking at the root causes of it. And the fact of the matter is, homelessness in Los Angeles, California, the United States, is the inevitable byproduct of our economic system, of our failed mental health care system, our failed healthcare system, of income inequality, of housing affordability. We have systems in this country that create homelessness. And in addition to housing the people who are homeless now, we need to fix those systems and make them more just and equitable.
Right. Ben, you see this kind of dirty politics go on all the time, where people take advantage of issues and they pretty much magnify them to the point that they tap into the emotional sides of people. The fact of the matter is that we have a lot of NIMBYs out there that have no interest in fixing or caring about what happens to the unhoused community. And you see that because you're working out there in the community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, as Mike was saying, it's a super complicated problem that has multiple root causes behind it. They're all systemic in nature. And some of those issues are very difficult to solve. Some of them, there are solutions in front of us that we can absolutely take advantage of. But while we're pushing towards those solutions, what we continue to run into is there are forces that are trying to stop any and all progress. And there's multiple different groups that are trying to do that. But a big problem that we have in California is our real estate developers, the developers and the money that they're pouring into our political systems to defeat progressive candidates, to recall progressive candidates, to elect corporate Democrats, to elect Republicans. This money in politics is really one of the most insidious forces that we are up against. And until we're able to get their influence out of our political systems, a lot of this progress is going to be difficult, maybe even impossible. So I think we really need to shine a light on the money that's coming into our political system through these developers, and to create legislation to be able to stop that corrosive influence of money in our political system.
So
Public financing of elections, clean money, that's what we need, baby.
Yes.
How do we go about doing that?
Well, if I could add one thing to what Ben said, I think it is, I don't think most people who live in Los Angeles, and I don't think most people who live in my district, are NIMBYs or don't want to solve this problem. But I think that there are certain forces, there are certain real estate forces, there are certain right-wing forces that are behind a lot of the recalls that are harnessing people's frustration over homelessness and telling them that the only way to deal with the solution is through law enforcement, through criminalization, through trying to legislate homelessness away. And they have written a very strong master narrative that is false. They have written a narrative that most people who are unhoused are there by choice. They want to be homeless, that they're drug addicted, mentally ill criminals who are threatening to people. And that has been a very, very powerful narrative that has stood in the way of a lot of progress. So I think being able to label, as Ben did, who's really behind the narrative and trying to remind people that policies of criminalization not only are wrong, but they're incredibly expensive and they do not work. They don't solve homelessness. And housing plus appropriate services does. And to the extent that Ben is also right, we need to change the political system. What we need to do is we need to have a clean money public financing system. I've worked with Clean Money California and with Money Out, Voters In for a number of years. We've tried to get a clean money system here. There hasn't been votes on the council to do it. We do have a pretty robust 6-to-1 grassroots matching fund here in Los Angeles, but it doesn't go as far as I'd like. We've also banned developer money from city elections. They don't take effect until our municipal runoff elections. So in the primary elections, a lot of candidates are still taking developer money. I've proposed that we have the ban cover the ongoing primaries that a lot of us are in. That hasn't even been scheduled for a hearing, but I'm not taking any myself.
So this ban on developer money, how did that come about?
That came about, frankly, because of a federal corruption probe here in Los Angeles of a couple council members, one council member who is now serving time, another one who has been indicted, involving influence peddling and bribery. And that got a lot more people engaged in reforming the current system, but we certainly have not gone far enough. I mean, a developer ban sounds nice and looks nice, and it's a good thing, but we really need to be getting the pervasive influence of money out of politics, and a public financing system is the way to go.
How do you think that a public financing system can come about through the within the political landscape in Los Angeles?
Well, there's two ways to do it. One is the council could create it. That's unlikely because most elected officials don't want to change a system that they are the byproduct of. If it's a system that got them elected, they don't want to change it. I'm fine changing it myself. The other is we could put an initiative before the voters. And we've had some discussions with Clean Money advocates. They've been focusing for the most part on some legislation in Sacramento to try to change the system statewide. But when the moment's right, we may try to do it by a ballot initiative down here. Of course, the tough part is, there'll be a lot of folks with big money who will be opposing it. And if you're running a clean money initiative, then you're not, by its very nature, raising a lot of big dollars. And so you've got to have a lot of grassroots energy behind it to combat it. So it takes some organizing.
Right. So definitely we see
Welcome back.
we see big money behind everything that's happening out there in the West Side. Is the influence of money, is We see that investors are worried when they don't see their money, returning to them. So all those things combined. But I want to be able to touch a little bit on very specific stuff that you think we need to be paying attention to regarding homelessness.
Sure.
And my thing has always been, how can we engage the people? Because you could have all the ideas, that you could come up with, but if people don't get behind these things, it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a number of different things. One is something I've been pushing for a while is in terms of program and policy development, we need to be elevating and magnifying the voices of people who are unhoused or who have been unhoused, because they know what programs are working. They know why outreach isn't hitting certain people. They know what the roadblocks are to housing, and they know what the negative consequences are of some policies. So one, I think we need to be magnifying those voices and elevating them, both in the legislative and in the public discussions. There's a lot of news stories that talk about homelessness, and they'll go out and they'll interview people who live near an encampment, and they'll never talk to somebody who's actually unhoused. The second thing I think is important is, I was talking a moment ago about the negative narrative that has been written about people that are unhoused. It picks, a real example of something bad and makes it seem as if that is the whole of homelessness. Is one of the biggest ways to get through that, I have found, is by people going out with either a mutual aid group or a group like we have in Los Angeles, where there's SELA or K-Town for All, or in my part of town, Neighborhoods in Partnership, where people go out and they do outreach, and in some cases case management to people who are unhoused, and that changes people. It changes their attitude. It changes how they talk about homelessness. It changes what they advocate for. And the third thing we need is we need to take the organizing skills that so many of us progressives have and apply it, not just when someone who's advocating for the right things on homelessness are facing a re-election or a recall election. I got both simultaneously, but also on the ground when there are projects being proposed. We need progressive organizing when someone is trying to provide housing in a community and it's facing approval. We need progressive advocacy in a community before a network of neighborhood councils, when one of my colleagues who's running for mayor is pushing a bunch of criminalization policies. That we need just sort of basic organizing 101 from the block and the neighborhood on up to City Hall.
You touch on something, you, Ben or Margaret, please feel free to jump in at any given time. I don't want to be the only one talking. But Mike, very, very important. You were unhoused. You lived out there on the streets. That to me speaks volumes, because you see the world and you see policies and you see the way the unhoused is being treated differently.
Yeah, I mean, we all bring our personal histories and our values into whatever work we do, and there's a few things that I bring into my experience. One of them is being a dad, right? I mean, that really fuels my passion, particularly for combating the climate crisis, because this is the future I'm leaving my little boy, right? Another is, I'm a recovering drug addict. I've been sober 26 years from booze and coke and crystal meth, and that reminds me that we are all redeemable, and that big, profound change, personal and political, can happen, right? The other experience that I have is that, when I was new to California in the early to mid 90s, I was facing housing instability, and I did spend a few nights on the street and a few nights in my car. I don't at all try to equate it to the type of homelessness that people are experiencing now living in encampments. Encampments weren't around then. But what it does give me is a very strong sense or understanding of what it feels like when the sun is going down and you don't know where you can sleep. You know, that is, if you haven't experienced that, it's hard to express how angering and frustrating and demoralizing, the whole range of emotions. And you know, I spend a lot of time talking to people who are unhoused, and if you talk to somebody about what that struggle is like today, you know, there are people who search for hours to find a safe place to sleep, and then it turns out that there's a sprinkler system there, and they wake up soaked, and all their belongings are wet. There are people who seek out a place where they won't be visible, so they won't disturb people. That people, you know, after a long, hard day of, you know, being out in the sun and being yelled at or being ignored, just want a place to be able to rest their head. And that voice and that understanding isn't articulated enough in the system, and it leads us to policies that focus on where people can't sleep instead of where people can sleep. Like, I don't want people sleeping on the sidewalk. I don't want people sleeping in tents in our parks. I want people indoors. But I don't like all this legislation that says where people can't sleep until we've told people where they can sleep. And so the question I keep asking, you know, based on conversations I have with people unhoused now, and based on my own recollection of what my own experience was in the 90s, is, you know, where can people go? Where can people sleep? If we can't answer that, we shouldn't be talking about where they can't be.
Wow.
Where do you think your detractors are coming from? Because I know that there is a recall out there against you, and just hearing you speak, it seems like you have a very strong understanding of the issues of the unhoused community. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on, you know, why there's a certain group out to have you recalled right now on this issue of the unhoused.
Well, I think that, I mean, we have recall fever in California right now, right? Our governor is subject to a recall right now. Our progressive district attorney is subject to a potential recall. The progressive district attorney in San Francisco, subject to a recall. Me and two of my colleagues, including Nithya Raman, the other really strong progressive voice on the council, all subject to recalls. It's all progressives. I mean, there's a through line. And, you know, I have people behind mine. I mean, you know, there's a long time Republican Orange County operative who is working on my recall. I have a former opponent of mine who's a strong supporter of the recall, who literally was a lobbyist for Donald Trump in Los Angeles. I've got people who are climate deniers. I've got people who are Republican mega donors that Donald Trump is a big fan of. But I'll be honest, I mean, there's also people of other political persuasions who have been brought on board to the recall because these right wingers are really stoking an undeniable and justifiable frustration with homelessness in Los Angeles or homelessness anywhere, and they're trying to make it seem as if homelessness is the cause of the people who are trying to solve the problem, and that's the sort of irony and the struggle of the recall efforts here in California, is people who are the real forces behind the recalls are the ones who are most supportive of the system that creates homelessness, or most opposed to the on-the-ground solutions to homelessness.
Right.
I'd also say, because in my case,
I'd like to.
In my case, a lot of the recall fury against me, just like against our governor and against our district attorney, is fueled by right-wing radio, which has had it out for me ever since I did the minimum wage, and has had it out for me ever since I talked about how we need to get off fossil fuels. I mean, they've been out against me for a while, and this has given them something to seize on, and so they talk about me and the governor and the DA sort of in one breath a lot.
And I think it's really important for progressives to take these threats, these recall threats, very seriously. This is obviously not going to go away until there's some sort of a change to the recall processes, and I don't see that coming anytime soon. And, you know, if we look at the recall effort for Newsom, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of our governor. He's done a handful of good things and he's done a lot of harm. But the recall effort would be an absolute disaster if it passes for progressives. The person leading in the recall, if the recall is successful, is Larry Elder. And all of the polls are showing that he has a pretty substantial lead. The support has really consolidated behind him from the Republican side. There's a lot of money behind him. When I'm driving around town, the only yard signs I'm seeing are Larry Elder yard signs. So the dude's probably going to end up getting, what, high teens, low 20s, which in a normal world would not be able to win an election. But yep. The vote's going to be so spread that most likely the top vote getter is going to have high teens or low 20s. And it looks like right now that would be Larry Elder. So some people, I think, are downplaying the threat. They're like, it's okay, we have a supermajority in our legislature. It's not okay. First of all, he's going to have the veto power. And people who say that the Democrats are going to line up to override those vetoes, that's not going to happen on progressive legislation. It may happen on moderate bills where you can get the consensus of Democrats. But even though we have a supermajority in the Senate and in the Assembly, we have a ton of corporate Democrats. We have a ton of moderates in there, which is why we're having such a hard time passing good bills in California. So the idea that we're going to get this consensus Democratic bloc to help us to pass, like, for example, we're working on AB 1177 right now to create a public banking option for every Californian in the state. 1 out of every 4 Californians is either unbanked or underbanked. Yep. They're being preyed upon by these payday lenders and by banks hitting them with overdraft fees. It's just perpetuating the cycle of poverty. So we're looking to break that by providing people with a free, no penalty banking account provided by the state of California. Now, this bill has just passed its most recent committee in the Senate. It's going to a Senate floor vote. We think that we have the support for it, and we think that Governor Newsom would sign it into law. If Governor Newsom is recalled, it's not going to get signed into law. And I don't think that we are going to be able to get the 2/3 necessary to override his veto, because we have enough Democrats who are opposed to this Public Banking Option Act because they're taking money from corporate interests, that I think this bill is going to die. And the same would be true for so many different progressive bills that are currently trying to make their way through a difficult system as is, that if we add a recalled Governor Newsom, we're going to see this progress just cease entirely. Not to mention all of the things that the governor can do at an executive level. You know, and we've seen some things. Newsom has been horrific in terms of how many oil leases and gas leases that he's provided, but he did come up with this idea of no more fracking leases starting in 2024. It's not anywhere close to bold enough, but it is a step in the right direction. He's doing that with executive action. That would immediately get repealed under a climate-denying Larry Elder. So this recall at the state level is extremely dangerous. I very much encourage progressives, whether you love Newsom, which I can't figure out how you do that, or don't have respect for Newsom, this is dangerous. You need to vote no. just vote no and leave it blank, or vote no and vote for your favorite Green candidate or socialist candidate or what have you. But those votes for those additional candidates are not going to have an impact, because Larry Elder is going to end up with the plurality in this election. So vote no. A yes vote and then voting for the socialist is basically a vote for Larry Elder. Vote no on the recall, or progressives are going to be in a world of shit, pardon my language, for the next year plus. And it's going to take time for us to recover from that as well.
And not just in California. I mean, I think one thing that doesn't get spoken about enough is that if Larry Elder or another of these Republicans replaces Gavin Newsom, they have the ability to appoint a U.S. senator if Dianne Feinstein weren't to finish her term. That would change the balance in the U.S. Senate. That would be a death knell for stuff like the relief bills that we're seeing that have been helping us in Los Angeles and helping us help renters and help us build homelessness. It would be a death knell to any Green New Deal type programs. And it's also important, I think, to name this recall fever for what it is. It is an attempt to disenfranchise people, particularly progressives and particularly people of color. In other states with Republican-controlled legislatures, they take people off the voting rolls. They make it harder to vote. They can't do that here, but the tool they have to choose their own electorate is recall elections. As Ben said, Gavin Newsom could have the support of 49.99% of the people who vote in the recall, and could be replaced by somebody who has the support of 18% of the people, who could never get elected in a regular election. My recall, if it qualifies, is probably going to be on the ballot in March of next year. My primary is 3 months later. So we're going to be spending, at least $1 million on an election 3 months before an election, because they know, it'll be a narrower electorate and they will have an easier time getting out their vote. It's a really troubling phenomenon. And that's why we're seeing it up and down the state. And Republicans and right wingers who are behind most of these things are going to get better at it. They're going to learn what works and what doesn't. And we have to look at a way to reform this, because it's a new cottage industry against progressives in California.
Yeah, and progressives across the state need to organize better to help defeat these recall efforts up and down. I mean, from Chesa Boudin, from Gascon, from you, Mike, and Nithya. Obviously, they're attacking progressives, and they're attacking people who are willing and able to disrupt the status quo. And if progressives don't figure out a way to organize and to help to defeat these efforts, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. If we keep winning elections as progressives and then being recalled, all of that time and energy and resources that go into that are going to impede our entire movement. So we need to take these threats very seriously, and we need to rally around people like Mike and like Nithya and like Chesa, and like Gascon. We need to do that. That's imperative for the progressive movement.
And George Gascon's recall basically started the day he took office.
Yeah.
And Nithya's been in office since December. And, they started her recall 3 months ago. I mean, they basically started it, before she even had a chance to do anything. I mean, it really is an effort to overturn elections.
One thing that we can see very clearly, for example, let's look at Sheriff Villanueva. He ran as a progressive. His policies became pretty much Republican policies. His attitude, his everything. He was given a mandate to go clean up the sheriff's department. He has done a terrible job. It's like he's got so many issues regarding the sheriff's department itself. But now his biggest supporters are Republicans and big money and big business. They love him because he's speaking their language, and their language don't care about the poor and those living in poverty. They don't care for those people. So for them, pushing their agenda of big money, influence, and profit, etc. So, and those are the things that we are constantly fighting against. So it makes no sense for any progressive to stay silent and to in some cases even join the other side. It's like, how can you call yourself progressive and you're supporting Republicans when clearly Republicans created homelessness by the policies that Ronald Reagan pushed back in the 80s when he eliminated services? We didn't have all these problems with the mental problems that and services that we used to have. All those things went out the window. All those safety nets, Republicans moved them. So it is dangerous. We need to see who's behind it, and we need to wise up because we have worked hard for too long to get where we are just to see it let go.
Well, and you don't need to go all the way back to the 80s either. You can go back to 4 days ago when the Supreme Court overturned the eviction protections, the eviction moratorium nationwide. I mean, here in LA, because we got enough votes to do some protections, we have an eviction moratorium that will last for a year after the end of this pandemic. And we're putting together, renter relief packages and all that. But, what's happening now, what the Supreme Court did the other day is making people homeless. The commodification of housing is making people homeless. During the last economic downturn, when private equity came in and hedge funds bought up housing, a lot of people lost their homes, and a lot of those people are homeless today. A lot of the people who are homeless, this doesn't get talked about it very much, are climate refugees, refugees of the climate crisis. There's a person we housed on Venice Beach who became homeless during one of the big fires in California last year. There are people who come from other parts of the city of Los Angeles to my coastal district because you can't survive in the San Fernando Valley in the summer with 106-degree temperatures living outdoors. Literally, the pavement burns you. And these are things that are happening today that are contributing to homelessness. And we gotta combat this stuff.
And Mark, we saw this during the days of Occupy, where all the blame was being put on homeowners, and through the movement, which their anniversary coming up, 10-year anniversary, we were able to flip the conversation and put the blame where it belonged. The problem right now is that these people are very stealthy. They use the crisis that everybody is bothered by, and they see themselves as the heroes because they are outspoken and they pretty much can use language with giving absolutely no solutions for the state of homelessness. They are against it, but they're not saying how they're going to fix it. And their interest is money. So there's no way in the world that they're going to lower the rent. They want higher. That's what they want. So Ben, we have a lot of work to do, brother.
Yes, we do. And the discussion about rent is absolutely critical. The rent is too damn high. Most people cannot afford rent in California. Nobody can afford rent based on the minimum wage. It's obscene how much is being charged for rent. And I was looking at possibly moving. I'm in Long Beach right now, and I was like, hey, might be moving. Looking around at rent, it's insane how much rents have gone up just over the past couple of years. And we're in the middle of a pandemic still, and people are suffering, and rents just keep going up, and housing prices keep going up. And we're seeing, these groups like BlackRock coming in and buying up properties and then renting them out for obscene amounts. And, we're like right now we have a couple pieces of legislation that are being looked at in SB 9 and SB 10, which it's a little confusing, to be honest, because you have some progressives who are looking at them and saying, hey, this is an approach that might be able to be a part of the solution, which comes down to zoning and being able to have multi-residences on a single plot and to be able to split some of these plots. And density is part of the solution, but it has to be done in the right way. And these two bills, neither of them have any language whatsoever about the requirement to build affordable housing. So something that on the surface sounds like it might be a good solution actually might be extremely dangerous, because you can have these property developers come in and buy up single plots of land in lower income communities, mainly Black and brown communities, and then turn those into condos, turn them into apartments, and then rent them at obscene levels of rent. It'll displace people, it'll lead to gentrification, it will lead to higher rents, it'll lead to less home ownership in Black and brown neighborhoods. It's dangerous, but a lot of people are confused. So you're seeing some progressives out there promoting these bills, while the bills are likely going to be extremely dangerous to a problem that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for our state and across the country, but very much here in our state.
And there are progressive alternatives.
This issue is.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say this.
Can you guys hear me actually? Because every time I try to speak, like everybody
it's a little.
So I don't know if it's my connection.
It's a little delayed.
You're coming delayed. Go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in Georgia, and that says everything. But this is a national issue. It's a national issue, and this is happening with the rents going up. This is happening across the country, and I mean, I actually experienced something similar here in Georgia, because I was having some problems with my apartment. There was some mold and stuff, and I considered moving. But I can't afford to move. I've been living here for 5 years, and the price that I pay right now, I can afford it because I've been living in this building for 5 years. If I had just moved to the city for the first time, this was my first year of graduate school, my stipend I would not be able to afford to live in the city with this stipend. As it is now, like pretty much 100% of my stipend goes to rent and utilities to be able to be a graduate student at a top university. So that is an issue for students, for families, for anyone who wants to live close to their job in the city, where so many working class people work. They work in the city, but if they want to actually live close to their job, they can't. And I think part of this has to do with, I think there's two things happening here. One, it's the effects of neoliberal policies that came about at the late 70s and early 1980s, which was this whole idea of individualism, free markets, and deregulation. And a lot of that we saw, early on with the taking jobs, exporting jobs out and opening up markets in other countries. But now all of these effects of deregulation are coming home to roost here through the effects of financialization, which is the fact that the dominant aspect of our economy is the finance sector. So anytime we have a crisis in this country, as we've seen since 2008 with the financial crisis, the people who get bailed out are actually the people who are part of the financial sector. So as we saw in 2020, we saw this immense boom in the stock market and very little for working class people, which we see as this K-shaped recovery, where on the one hand we have the very rich doing way better, and then everybody else is either like very stagnant or poop, been in a worse situation. Financialization, this rentier thing, where people are basically trying to make money, wealth, without creating like new resources, right? So if we just buy up all the homes, if we just turn everybody into renters, we're going to get filthy rich, and that is the whole process of financialization. So these issues that we're seeing right now with the unhoused and seeing, the loss of affordable housing is part of a much more systemic issue of capitalism, and the fact that you're being targeted for because you don't think we should use fossil fuels anymore, or that you're being recalled, and progressives are being recalled. Progressives are like the only ones out there really saying, hey, we don't like climate change. It just speaks volumes to the fact that we're all trapped in this nightmare of essentially whatever, very but late stage capitalism. And the question really to everyone here and to anyone that I speak to is that I really want people, there's no real good answer now, but to really ask the question is, how do we get out of this? Because we have good ideas, we know what we need to do, we have to the unhoused issue, we have the solutions for so that everyone can have healthcare, but we so far we're unable to make these solutions realized. So my question is really to really push people, especially you, council member, because you are in a unique position amongst our group here in this discussion, is to really ask ourselves, what is it going to take for us to seriously see these things change? Because we are running out of time in terms of what we can do to prevent the worst of happening from catastrophic climate change. We are not even realistically sure that we can maintain global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius, let alone 2 degrees Celsius. I don't know. I mean, the fact that we even were allowed to say that we were okay with raising the temperature that high, even 1 degree Celsius, is insanity. And we are seriously endangering ourselves and future generations. And I really want to really push people to think serious. What are we going to do? What is it going to take? Yes, we have to stop these recalls, but then what? Is it enough just to show up every day, to show up to the legislature every day, or to do the same things that we've been doing every day? Are these enough? Because one definition of insanity is continuously doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result. So I've been enjoying this discussion immensely, and those are my 2 cents. And I'm just a physicist who is very desperate to see the future that we deserve. So any thoughts, or are you welcome to change the subject?
No. That was spot on, and I share that fear, and since the IPCC report came out, I've heard from some people who are almost feeling a little helpless and hopeless, and if I think there is still reason for hope, because here in LA and in California, but in LA in particular, there are major things we can do, right? I mean, we have to beat back the recalls. We have to organize. We have to do public financing, all the things we've discussed, because that affects the ecosystem we're in. But if you think about it, the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, it controls some of the biggest sources of pollution, and can therefore make them into the biggest examples of sustainability, right? We own our own airport. We own our own port. We own the largest municipal utility in the country. We have one of the largest transit systems in the country, and we get to weigh in on what gets built, where it gets built, and what it gets built from, right? So, we're doing a lot to green our airport. A lot of what we've tried for the port has gotten overturned by courts or legislation. We're gonna get to 100% clean energy by 2035. I want us to see if we can get there by 2030. But we're actually busting a lot of barriers and myths despite the fossil fuel industry. We're going to get our city's municipal bus fleet all electric by 2028. LA Metro by 2030. We got to expand out the transit system with that. I mean, there's so much people in Los Angeles can do. We got to do all this work to make it happen, but we really have the ability to make big impact. And when LA makes big impact, other places follow too.
Ben?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, looking at working at the local level. You know, whether you're in a big city or county like Los Angeles, or whether you're in a smaller community, there's a lot of things that can be done at the ground level to start this process. And we know we're going to blow past 1.5 degrees. You know, right now, the trajectory that we're looking at, we're going to blow past 2 degrees. And the scenarios at 1.5 or at 2 are just absolutely terrifying. And anybody who's not absolutely terrified at the climate crisis right now needs to pay more attention. This is an existential threat to us. We're gonna need, without doubt, change at the federal level. It has to happen. Obviously, the federal government has the ability to print money and to allocate massive resources either towards harm or towards good. So we have to have action there, but we cannot ignore the importance of local action, whether it's at the state level or whether it's at the county or city level. Those things need to happen. And as Mike said, you know, Los Angeles can be an example for how we can do this sustainably in a way that not only allows our economy to do well, but for all of us to thrive under that type of a system. We can do that. We're making some progress, but obviously it's nowhere close to as fast enough or as bold as we need to do. And, you know, one thing I want to highlight here again is the money. The amount of money in California that is being spent by the fossil fuel industry to stop progress is frightening. When we look at, like right now, in the California Democratic Party, one of the things we're fighting on, and we're going to be doing a very aggressive direct action campaign against the party, is going to be about fossil fuel money that's going into the party. The party had a finance committee that made a recommendation for the party not to take fossil fuel money. What did Chair Rusty Hicks do? He took $330,000 from Sempra Energy. Sempra Energy, who's one of the main entities that's trying to destroy net metering for rooftop solar, which would greatly impede our ability to implement solar at mass scale in residential situations. So the California Democratic Party, who has a Green New Deal in its party platform, who says that it cares about climate change, that says that it's going to be fighting for bold action on climate change, is taking money from the entities that are destroying and fighting against us. And it turns the California Democratic Party into a money laundering machine to get oil money and gas money and developer money and pharmaceutical money into the hands of politicians. You know, so until the Democrats and the Democratic Party can clean up our damn house, like, who are we to speak about all of these bold things, or about how bad the Republicans are, or how bad the fossil fuel industry is, when we're taking their damn money? So there's a lot of different ways that we need to attack this problem. We need to attack the money that's flowing into the system. It's corrosive, it's corrupt, and it's stopping or slowing down progress. We need to take action at the local level, and we need to build power at the federal level, because without something that resembles a Green New Deal at the federal level, we are going to struggle mightily towards transitioning. And we're also going to struggle to transition with a just transition, and make sure that we're not leaving people behind and exacerbating problems that already exist in our extractive capitalist system.
Yes, thank you. Mike, we're running out of time, and I don't want to take more of the time that you are giving us, because you do have a family. But how can people get in touch with you if people are interested in helping your campaign? We know this is critical right now. We cannot allow this seat to go to a Republican or to some investor or developer that controls a particular candidate. How can we help you?
Go to mikebonin.com and you can sign up to help in various different sort of ways. It's my re-election page, but if you contact that, we'll be able to connect you to any ways to be supportive or to engage in different issues at the neighborhood level. Working on the campaign or the anti-recall through organizing door to door or donations is key, but a bigger part of it, I mean, this is bigger than just me, is contributing to the broad progressive action here in Los Angeles on affordable housing, on renters, on climate change, on free transit, on homelessness, on public banking. We're on the verge of some really good things here, and showing what those things can do is the best defense against the attempts to take out progressives.
Ben,
But Mike Bonin, MikeBonin.com.
got it. Thank you. Ben,
Thanks.
any last thoughts that you may have?
Yeah, I just implore everybody to get involved at the local level. I know a lot of people are frustrated and angry, and they see a lack of progress. Some of the races with Bernie in 2016 and Bernie in 2020, and recently with Nina Turner, can be very discouraging because we see what's stacked against us. But I encourage people to keep fighting. And if you're frustrated at the federal level, get involved locally. Like, you can have a huge impact if you're trying to elect a progressive in the city council or onto a water board or what have you. There's a lot of action that we can do that'll have a very specific and very profound change on the communities around us. And that's how we build. We have to build from the bottom up. This change isn't going to come from top down. And eventually we're going to meet in the middle there, and that's where our power is going to be. So please get involved. If you're here in California and you're interested, the Progressive Caucus is open to any Democrat, and we don't charge if you don't have the money to pay the fees. Get involved with the Progressive Caucus. We're a bunch of troublemakers. We're out there to affect change. We're radical. We're going to be doing some direct actions against the party for taking fossil fuel money. We're going to be partnering up with DSA chapters and the Sunrise Movement, and we're going to be outside of the CDP headquarters, camping out, blocking up everything until they actually affect change and stop taking this dirty money, dirty law enforcement money, dirty fossil fuel money. So please join the Progressive Caucus. You can also find me on Facebook, Ben Hauck, on Twitter under Fight Denial, and reach out to me. I'll be happy to connect and we can work together.
Any final thoughts, Mike?
Organize, agitate, get out there and let's do the work. These battles are really, really important. It takes inside, outside strategies. We need to be doing the grassroots organizing in the neighborhoods, and then we need to support and defend and elect more of the people who are on the inside doing the work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
So Margaret,
thank you, Ben.
And yeah, just give a couple final thoughts myself and turn it over to Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for I know that we took a lot of the time here today, but you always been there, so supportive of our guests and stuff. But it's been an honor to have both of you here today. I say that from my heart because I monitor what politicians are doing here in Los Angeles. I saw what was happening in Echo Park. I saw the stuff that was happening in Venice. We went over there. We talked to the grassroots organizers that have been there for years working with the community. It is something that none of us want to see, but at the end of the day, these issues are very, very difficult. And yes, we have a long ways to go, but I think that Mike has been doing a good job in paying attention and taking this in a different route, in a different direction, not the criminalization of the unhoused, but actually having the humanity and being able to understand that there is more just to getting people out of the street, out of one street, pushing them to another one. We need real solutions. So with that, I want to say thank both of you guys for having joined us here. Again, you have my full support, Mike. Anything that I can do for you, Ben, likewise over there with the great work that you guys are doing with the Progressive Caucus. So thank everybody. Margaret? Margaret, are you there? You
Thanks,
froze?
Carlos. Thank you, everyone, for. Am I here? Am I here?
Now you are.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I don't know. It's just been crazy since I got back to Atlanta. I think I'm going to go back to California. But thank everyone for joining us today. We've had really great discussion. And I actually, before we go, I just wanted to read a sentence or two sentences from a paper that I really like. It came out in I think 2006, and it really talks about this stage of transformation and in societies and collapse, and right now we're facing a critical moment, and it applies to the councilman's race and this whole recall and the pandemic and everything like that, but it's just food for thought. If the current system is not viable, it is necessary to invest in forms of capital that will enable fundamental change. It would also be necessary to stop investing in the capitals that maintain the unviable regime. The political difficulty of doing this is why social ecological systems so often remain maladapted to current conditions and opportunities and eventually reach the point of collapse. So that means that we're actually at a crossroads here. And now it's not just, financial that we have to ourselves out of. Anything that is part of the system that currently doesn't work, we need to move that into a system that can work. But right now we're seeing this conflict here where can you hear me? Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, we gotta go. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I can hear myself, so I'm gonna just say please join us 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm Margot Pies. You've been watching Stand Up Fight Back. My host is Carlos Marroquin. You've been listening to our discussion with Mike Bonin and Ben Hauck, which I just messed up your name, so sorry. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Now, if I can actually end the broadcast, there we go. Okay.
All right.
All right. Sorry, my connection
We're still on.
is terrible.